the last customer has gone. The door is closed. The street outside is emptying. The smell of the shop hangs in the air, dense and complicated, the way it always does at this hour. Dried herbs and camphor. A mineral sharpness from the alum jars. Something sweeter beneath it, almost medicinal, that no single ingredient quite explains. In a narrow building on the Via dei Servi, a man named Luca is finishing his work. He is an apothecary. A maker of remedies, a keeper of substances, a man who stands between the world of raw matter and the world of healing. One of the most trusted tradesmen in any Florentine neighborhood. All day he is measured and weighed, steeped and filtered, advised and listened. Ground resins between his palms. Poured preparations into small clay pots for the anxious hands of customers who needed something to get through the week. And every evening, when the customers are gone, there is a ritual. The securing of the bottles. The logging of the day. The slow, deliberate closing of the shop. Tonight, like every night, Luca will secure his bottles before rest. Let us join him as the shop grows quiet. The apothecary is a single long room on the ground floor of the building. The family lives above. Luca has his workroom here, in his storefront. All the work and all the commerce happen in this one room, divided by a wooden counter that runs across the width of the space. Behind the counter is Luca's world. The shelves cover every wall from floor to near the ceiling. Hundreds of vessels. Terracotta jars of varying sizes, each one sealed with cloth and wax. Glass bottles, real glass, costly, reserved for the preparations that must be seen, amber and clear and pale green, stoppered with ground glass plugs or tight-wrapped cork. Wooden boxes with fitted lids. Small drawers in a cabinet he built himself, each one labeled in his careful script. The evening light comes through two small windows onto the Via dei Servi. The light is going. The street noise is diminishing, fewer footsteps, fewer voices calling from window to window across the narrow lane. Luca stands behind the counter. He is a man of 51. Medium height. Thin in the way of men who forget to eat during busy days. His hands are his most distinctive feature, the fingers long and precise, stained in various places from various substances. Walnut hull brown on one knuckle that will never quite fade. A faint yellow at the thumb from the sulfur he works with on Tuesdays. His face is sharp-featured. Dark eyes behind a slight squint, a habit from years of reading fine text in poor light. He keeps his hair short and his beard close-trimmed, more out of practicality than vanity. Too much hair near the workbench means too many opportunities for things to catch. He reaches for the first bottle. The securing of the bottles begins with the glass. These are his most valuable items, not only in money but in importance. The preparations kept in glass are the ones that require it, substances that must not react with the container, liquids that must be examined for clarity, tinctures where color signals quality. He lifts the first bottle from its position on the shelf and holds it toward the last light from the window. A pale golden liquid. His oil of St. John's wort, made from the flowers he dried in July and steeped in olive oil for 40 days. The color is good, deep amber at the center, golden at the edges. The right color means the preparation went well. He checks the cork. It is seated properly. He presses it with his thumb, feeling for any give. None. He sets it back in its place. The motion is practiced. The bottle goes back exactly where it came from, angled slightly so the label faces outward. Each bottle in this shop has a position and an orientation. Not by rigid rule, but because a shop that is consistent with itself is a shop where errors are visible. When something is out of place, you notice. When you notice, you find the problem before it becomes a crisis. He moves to the next bottle. He has thought about the arrangement of his shelves for many years. They are organized by the nature of the substance, but within that, by frequency of use. What he reaches for most often sits at the height of his hand. The seldom used jars are above and below. The dangerous substances are in the locked cabinet on the far wall. Mercury compounds. Certain mineral preparations that must be dispensed only in very small amounts, very carefully, with precise instruction. He is one of perhaps a dozen men in Florence who handles these regularly. This is a responsibility he takes with complete seriousness. He moves along the upper shelf, checking the wax seals on the terracotta jars. Most are intact. One, a jar of dried valerian root, has a small crack in the wax at the edge. He makes a note in his mind. He'll reseal it tonight before he sleeps. The dried herbs require different attention than the liquids. An improperly sealed herb jar loses its potency. A year's worth of careful drying and storing can be undermined by a single gap in the wax. He presses the crack gently. Not enough to deepen it. Just enough to feel its extent. Small. He can fix it. Before continuing with the bottles, he opens the ledger. It sits on the corner of the workbench, a large bound book, pages of good paper, the spine reinforced with strips of leather. He buys a new one every 3 years from the papermaker on the Via dei Benci. The left page records what came in. The right page records what went out. Today's entries are in his working hand, the quick notation he uses during the day. Numbers and abbreviated names. He can read it, his apprentice can read it. Whether anyone else could is less certain. He needs to write the fair copy. He sharpens his quill. He keeps a small knife for this purpose only, reserved for the quill and nothing else. A quill sharpened with a knife used for other things picks up residues. Once he ruined a quill with traces of sulfur from the workbench knife and spent an evening trying to understand why his letters were smearing. He learned. Now, one knife for the bench, one for the quill. He sharpens the nib. Tests it with a single mark on the edge of the blotter. Good. He begins the fair copy. The day's dispensing, in order. First, the morning. A preparation for Mona Berta from the house 2 streets over, a syrup of horehound and honey for a persistent cough. He had made it yesterday and it was ready. He measured it into a small clay pot, sealed it, and wrote the instruction on a strip of paper that he tucked under the lid, 2 spoonfuls morning and evening, not more. He writes this in the ledger. Then, a packet of dried chamomile for an elderly man who comes every 2 weeks for the same thing and never varies. The man has trouble sleeping. The chamomile tea helps, or he believes it does, which may amount to the same thing. He writes this. Then the larger commission, the tonic for the household of a wool merchant near the Mercato Vecchio. That one was complicated. The merchant's wife had sent her servant with instructions, the servant had communicated them imperfectly, and Luca had spent 20 minutes carefully re-establishing what was actually needed. He had then prepared it properly, charged appropriately for the extra time. He writes this. Several smaller sales. A powder of dried ginger for a traveler who had the stomach troubles of the road. A poultice preparation, dried plantain, good for drawing, for a woman whose son had a splinter deeply embedded. The ledger fills. He turns the page. What came in today is shorter but in some ways more important. The incoming materials are the foundation. Without good ingredients, no preparation is possible. This morning, before the shop opened, a delivery from the herb gatherer he works with, a man who walks the hills outside the city and knows every plant by its common and its Latin name both. Today's delivery, bundles of dried rosemary, lavender, sage. A small paper packet of something Luca had specifically requested, the dried bark of a tree the herb gatherer had found growing in a garden near Fiesole, which Luca believes to be the true cinchona, though he has not yet fully satisfied himself on this point. He unwraps the packet again now. Looks at the bark in the fading light. A reddish brown. Slightly bitter smell, even dried. He brings a small piece to his nose and breathes in. If this is what he thinks it has uses he has been wanting to explore. There are reports from physicians who traveled to the Eastern Territories. Notes he has been reading in the evenings. He wraps it carefully again. Puts it back. He will think about it more before he uses it. He writes the delivery in the ledger. A sound from the back room, the sound of someone trying to be quiet and not quite managing it. Ginevra, Luca says. A pause. I'm finished with the grinding, says a voice. Show me. The curtain to the back room parts. Ginevra is 17. She has been his apprentice for 2 years and will be his apprentice for 3 more if everything proceeds as it should. She is, and he acknowledges this as fact, not favoritism, exceptionally capable. She carries a small bowl of ground spice. He looks at it. Cardamom, for a compound preparation he is making in stages. The grinding must be fine and even. He takes a pinch and rubs it between his fingers. Lifts it to his nose. Fine. Even. Good work. Good, he says. She has already learned not to wait for more than that. Early in her apprenticeship she used to hover, waiting for elaboration. Now she understands, good from Luca means genuinely good. He would say something more if there were something to say. Can I go? She asks. The mortar. Another pause. I'll clean the mortar. She disappears back through the curtain. The mortar is, in fact, the most important thing to clean tonight. They used it today for a sequence of substances that must not contaminate one another. Luca had cleaned it between uses himself. He always does this when the sequence matters, but the final preparation, a compound of several mineral-derived ingredients, has left a residue that requires more than a quick wash. This is why he reminded Ginevra. Not because she would forget. She is past forgetting the mortar. But because the how of the cleaning still requires attention. Certain residues release when scrubbed with vinegar. Others respond only to careful abrasion with fine sand. Some must be washed first, then left to soak, then rinsed. He hears her working in the back room. The sound of water. The rhythmic scrape of the abrasive. She is using the right approach. He can tell by the sound. He returns to his ledger. He finishes the fair copy and closes the ledger. Now the locked cabinet. He keeps the key on a cord at his belt. Not because he fears theft from within the shop, he trusts Ginevra absolutely, and the shop is otherwise secured, but because the habit of the key on the belt is itself a discipline. The key at his belt means the cabinet is on his mind. He unlocks it. Inside, the rows of small vessels, these ones more deliberately arranged than the main shelves. Labels more carefully written. Measurements more precisely recorded in a separate book that never leaves this cabinet. He checks each one. Mercury in its sealed glass vessel, stable, the vessel intact. He does not handle this vessel more than necessary. He uses it rarely, in very small amounts, for preparations that have no substitute and are given only with the most precise instructions. A jar of white arsenic. He uses this for the preparation of certain compounds at concentrations too low for harm, and for pest control preparations he sells to households. He is careful to make the distinction clear. The household preparation and the medicinal one go into different types of container, labeled differently, sealed differently. He checks each vessel the same way he checked the glass out front. Cork pressed, label verified, quantity estimated against what was there yesterday. All present. All secured. He locks the cabinet. With the key back at his belt, he pauses and listens. The sounds of the Via dei Servi at this hour are different from the sounds of noon. The street vendors are gone. The carts no longer rattle on the paving stones. What remains are the quieter sounds of the residential hour, windows being pulled shut against the evening chill, a bell from the church of Santissima Annunziata not far away, a conversation between neighbors that drifts down from the upper floors. He has lived in this building for 23 years. He knows the sounds of this street the way he knows the feel of his own instruments, by long familiarity, so that variations from the norm are immediately noticeable. A loud argument means nothing. Arguments are common. A sustained cry is different. A fire smell would bring him immediately to the window. Tonight there is nothing that requires attention. Just the ordinary evening settling of a Florentine neighborhood. He closes his eyes for a moment. Just a moment. Not to sleep, he is not the kind of man who naps, but to let the sounds of the street organize themselves in his mind. A small orientation. He opens his eyes. Back to work. She comes out of the back room. The mortar is in her hands, clean, he can see from across the room, properly done. She sets it in its place on the bench. The bark that came today, she says. What do you think it is? He looks at her. She has been thinking about it too. He is not surprised. She notices what comes into the shop with genuine curiosity. Not just diligence. I think it may be the bark the physician Montserrat describes in his letters from the New World territories, he says. The one associated with certain fevers. She thinks about this. How will you know for certain? I won't. Not with certainty. I'll compare it against every description I have. I'll do some trials at very small scale. And I'll ask whether anyone else in the city has examined a similar specimen. She nods slowly. What if it isn't what you think? Then it's still an interesting bark and I'll learn something. She almost smiles. This is, he thinks, the right answer to scientific uncertainty. Whatever the outcome, you learn something. Go, he says. Your mother will be expecting you. She goes. With the shop to himself, he returns to the bark. He unwraps it again. This is not a task. He has already looked at it twice. This is something else, the particular attention that a genuinely interesting question demands. He cannot stop thinking about it the way he cannot stop thinking about a word he has learned that he doesn't yet fully understand. He has read the available descriptions from memory so many times that the passages feel inscribed somewhere behind his eyes. The bark's properties. The uses to which it had been put. The circumstances under which it was said to work. He does not fully believe everything in the reports. He is a skeptical man by nature and training. Too much of what circulates as medical knowledge is hearsay dressed in authority. But some things in the reports accord with what he knows of how fevers work. Some mechanisms he can imagine. He wraps the bark. He will be methodical. He will be patient. He will not rush the question of what this is because rushing such questions leads to errors, and errors in this profession lead to harm. He sets it on a specific spot on his workbench, a spot he uses for things that are under active consideration. Not solved. Not put away. Just held. He remembers the valerian jar. He goes to the shelf and takes it down. Yes, the crack in the wax is small but real. Not a gap yet, but the beginning of one. Left another week, it would open. He carries the jar to his workbench. The wax for sealing is kept in a small iron pot near the small brazier he uses for heating preparations. The pot sits on a trivet, the wax inside it already at room temperature. He will need to heat it. He lights the brazier. Not the full heat of a working fire, just enough to melt the edge of the wax pot. He works the bellows twice, gently, and watches the coals catch. While the wax heats, he examines the jar's label. He wrote it 3 years ago. Valerian radix, with the date of acquisition. The ink has faded slightly. He will need to renew the label soon, not tonight, but soon. Labels must be legible. This is not vanity. It is safety. A label read correctly is a substance administered correctly. A label misread or faded to the point of ambiguity is a potential error waiting to happen. The wax begins to soften at the edges of the pot. He dips a small brush into the softened wax. The brush is made for this purpose, a few stiff hairs bound tightly, good for applying wax in controlled amounts to the edges of the jar seal. He works carefully around the crack. The wax flows into it and fills it. He smooths the surface with the back of the brush. Then he holds the jar still while the wax cools. This takes perhaps a minute. He stands with the jar in both hands, not thinking of much, watching the wax shift from glossy to matte as it sets. There is something meditative about this task. No decision is required. No judgment. Just patience while the material does what materials do. He finds that some of his best thinking happens during the tasks that require no thought. The sweeping, the sorting, the resealing. His mind, freed from deliberate work, tends to make connections it can't make under pressure. Tonight, standing with the valerian jar, he thinks about the bark again. About what Ginevra said, "How will you know for certain?" He won't. That is the answer he gave, and it is the true one. In this field, certainty is rarely available. What is available is accumulating confidence, repeated observation, careful documentation, the slow assembly of knowledge that might, over years, begin to resemble certainty. He is building that structure, brick by brick, entry by entry in the ledger. He sets the jar down. The seal is good. He crosses to the cabinet of drawers. These small drawers are his pride. He built the cabinet himself, or rather, he designed it and a carpenter he worked with built it to his specifications. 48 drawers, each a different size, each labeled. The larger drawers hold the common herbs. Dried mint, dried thyme, dried nettle, dried elderflower. These he sells in quantity and replenishes regularly from the herb gatherer's deliveries. The smaller drawers hold the rarer things. Saffron, measured out in threads. Dried rosebuds from a garden he trusts. The particular kind of dried citrus peel that his preparation calls for, different from ordinary orange peel. Each evening he opens a selection of drawers to verify what he has. Not all 48. He has a rotation, a different set each evening, so that over the course of a month, every drawer has been checked. Tonight's rotation begins with the upper left. He pulls the first drawer. Dried mint. He lifts a pinch and brings it to his nose. Good, still fragrant. If it had lost its smell it would need replacing. Smell is the first indicator of potency in dried herb. He closes it. Opens the next. He pauses between the 6th and 7th drawers. The smells have shifted slightly, as they always do in the evening. All day, the shop is full of human traffic, the smell of customers, of street air from the open door, of outdoor Florence in the autumn. The smell of whatever preparation he's been making at the bench, which varies by day. Now, with the door closed and the customers gone, those transient smells are fading. What remains is the shop's own smell. The deep, layered smell that lives in the walls and the shelving in the wood of the drawers. He has smelled this smell every evening of his adult life. He could not describe it to anyone who hadn't spent time in an apothecary's shop. It is not the smell of any single thing. It is the accumulated smell of everything, all the substances that have been stored and used and handled in this space over decades. His father worked in this shop before him. His father's hands reached into these drawers, different drawers then, but in the same cabinet, in the same building. He sometimes thinks he can smell that history. He cannot, of course. Not literally. But there is something in a place that has been used with care for a long time that is different from a new room. Something settled. Something that resists easy description. He breathes it in. Opens the 7th drawer. Dried lavender. Good. He closes the drawer. His father, Bernardo, died 14 years ago. He was a good apothecary in the older style, less systematic than Luca, more intuitive. He knew his substances by smell and touch in years of practice, not by the written records that Luca keeps. The argument they had, in the last years of his father's life, was always the same argument. Bernardo thought Luca's ledgers and labels and precise measurements were the overcaution of a nervous temperament. Luca thought his father's intuition, however impressive, was not transferable. What existed in his father's head died with his father. What exists in a well-kept ledger survives. He won the argument, in the sense that he built the practice the way he wanted to. But he misses his father's hands on the preparations. His father could tell, from the smell of a batch, whether it would work. Luca can do this now too. It took years of practice to develop. But he still keeps the ledgers. Both things are necessary. The knowledge in the hands and the knowledge on the page. Neither is complete alone. He opens the 8th drawer. Near the end of the upper row, there is a jar that is different from the others. It is glass, not terracotta. It is sealed with wax over the cork, and the wax has been marked with his initials, a small impression of the brass seal he uses for his most valuable preparations. Inside, saffron. Not the packets of saffron he sells by the pinch to housewives for flavoring. This is the medicinal saffron, a different grade, from a different source, stored separately. He does not have much. He never has much. It is expensive because acquiring it in this quality is difficult and the plant's yield is small. He holds the jar to the fading light. The saffron inside is the red-orange of a sunset at the edge of a cloud. Dense, dry threads. He will not open this jar tonight. He has no reason to. He is simply looking. There is something about the best materials, the most carefully sourced, the most precisely prepared, that rewards attention even when you are not using them. The jar is a reminder of what the work is for. Not the transaction. Not the profit, though profit is necessary and real. But the quality of the thing itself. He sets it carefully back. He goes to the window. The Via dei Servi is nearly empty now. A man with a lantern passes, going somewhere, head down, coat pulled against the October cold. 2 boys at the far end of the street, running, the sound of their feet sharp on the stones and then gone around the corner. Above the roofline across the street, the sky is the deep blue of early evening. Stars are appearing. He watches for a moment. He thinks about Florence. Not as an abstraction, he is not a contemplative man, not given to philosophical reverie, but in the specific and practical way that a man thinks about the city he has lived in his whole life. He knows this neighborhood in the way you know something you have never stood outside of. The baker 2 streets over, whose bread he has eaten every morning for a decade. The widow on the corner who grows herbs in pots on her windowsill and sometimes leaves bundles on his step. The children whose names he knows because he treated their fevers and their cuts and their stomach troubles. He is part of something. A neighborhood. A city. A web of people who depend on one another in ways that are mostly unspoken. The apothecary is a node in that web. People come to him at the moment they are frightened, or in pain, or confused about what is happening inside their own bodies. He does not take that lightly. He never has. He turns from the window. On the back bench, the workbench, not the customer counter, there is a preparation he did not finish today. He had intended to complete the third step of a compound tonic before the shop closed. He did not. The merchant's commission took longer than expected, and then a conversation with a physician who came in late afternoon extended past what he had planned. He stands before the unfinished work. He could finish it tonight. It is not late. He has done this before, worked into the dark hours because something required completion. But he examines the question honestly. Does this need to be done tonight? Is there a customer waiting who cannot wait until tomorrow? No. The preparation is at a stable point. The components already combined are not at risk. Nothing in the mixture requires immediate attention. It will keep until morning. He covers it with a piece of clean linen. Sets a weight on the linen's edge to hold it. This is not procrastination. It is judgment. Some things that feel urgent are not actually urgent. The ability to tell the difference, to resist the pull toward unnecessary work simply because the work exists, is its own kind of skill. He is better at this than he was 20 years ago. He leaves the preparation until morning. The light through the windows has become too dim to work by. He lights the oil lamp on the bench. Trims the wick carefully before lighting it. A good wick trim makes the difference between a clear flame and a smoky one. He has learned this through years of working in lamplight. The lamp takes the flame. It burns clearly. A good, steady light. He carries it along the shelves for one final check before the formal closing of the shop. This pass is different from the careful attention he gave earlier. This is more of a survey, the overall impression, from left to right along each shelf, looking not for specific problems but for anything that presents as wrong. A vessel that's not where it should be. A seal that catches the lamplight in a way that suggests a gap. A color that looks different than yesterday. He moves slowly. Nothing flags his attention. The shelves are orderly. The preparations are in their places. The locked cabinet is locked. He is satisfied. Apart from the ledger, Luca keeps a separate journal. The ledger records the commerce. The journal records the thinking. He takes it from the shelf beside the desk where he does his evening reading, a smaller book, personal in scale, with a worn cover that has been retied 3 times as the binding loosened. He opens it to where he left off. Recent entries include observations on the effect of timing on the potency of dried herb preparations, specifically, whether herbs dried in early August hold their properties differently than those dried in late September. He has been tracking this for 3 seasons and has not yet drawn a conclusion, but the data is accumulating. And before that, his notes on a discussion with a physician about the mechanism of certain persistent coughs. They disagreed, politely, about the role of the humors in the process. Luca is not certain the humoral framework fully explains what he observes. But he is careful about saying so. He operates in a world where disagreeing too publicly with established frameworks creates difficulties. He writes tonight's entry. The bark. Its appearance. Its smell. Its origins, as best he can determine. His speculations, clearly marked as such. He is careful to distinguish observation from inference. Always has been. What he sees with his eyes. what he concludes from what he sees. These are different things. He writes for perhaps 10 minutes. Closes the journal. He sits at the desk after closing the journal. He is thinking about something that happened many years ago. He was young, newly established. A woman came to him with a complaint he misidentified. He gave her a preparation that was not harmful but was also not helpful. He did not find out until later, weeks later, that what she actually had was something else entirely, something he should have recognized if he had asked different questions. She recovered. Not because of his preparation, but despite it. Her own body managed the illness. He has thought about this episode many times over the years. It does not torment him the way it once did. He has made peace with it in the way you make peace with a formative error, by understanding exactly where you went wrong and by building that understanding into everything you do afterward. He asks more questions now. He listens to answers more carefully. He is slower to conclude. When he is uncertain, he says he is uncertain, which is not always what customers want to hear but is better for them in the end. The preparation he gave that woman probably did nothing. But it could have interfered. He got lucky. He does not rely on luck. He sits with the memory for a moment. Not as punishment. Just as reminder. Then he stands. He can hear the family upstairs. His wife Margarita. His daughter Katerina, who is 11. His mother-in-law, who came to live with them after her husband died 2 years ago and has not quite stopped grieving, in the way that some people don't. The sounds from above are the sounds of a family settling toward supper. Margarita's voice, steady and practical. His mother-in-law's softer murmur. Katerina, whose voice has a particular quality of intensity when she is telling someone something she considers important. He smiles. He has been in this shop since before dawn. Since the first customer arrived, which was a boy of about 12 sent by his mother with a note about a toothache, and Luca had been waiting with the clove preparation already made because this same boy had been sent by this same mother for this same reason 3 times before. A long day. But there's Margarita upstairs, and supper, and Katerina who will have something important to say. He begins the final tasks. He wipes down the customer counter. This is a task he performs at the end of every day. The counter is where everything is handed across, where the preparations go from his hands to the customers, where money changes hands, where conversations happen. It accumulates the residue of the day. He uses a cloth dampened with vinegar water. The vinegar is useful for its cleaning properties and for reasons he has come to believe have something to do with preventing certain kinds of sickness, though he could not fully explain the mechanism. He wipes the full length of the counter. Then back again. He checks the surface, no residue, no staining. Some of his colleagues in the guild think this kind of attention to surfaces is excessive. He doesn't argue with them. He simply maintains his practice and notices that his customers, over years, tend not to fall ill with the particular kinds of sickness that spread between people. He folds the cloth and puts it to soak in a basin of fresh vinegar water. He thinks briefly about the guild meeting next week. The Arte degli Speziali, the Guild of Apothecaries, meets monthly, in the upper room of a building near the Mercato Nuovo. Luca has been a member for 25 years. For 3 of those years he served as one of the guild's officers. He does not love the meetings. They involve a great deal of discussion of matters that feel more political than practical. Who should be admitted as a full member? Whether the guidelines for certain preparations need revision. Disputes between members that have been simmering for years and surface, formally, at meetings. But he goes. Always. The guild matters. It is the structure that maintains standards. Without it, the practice of his trade would become a different thing, more chaotic, more open to fraud, more dangerous to the people who depend on it. He does not love meetings. He loves what the meetings are in service of. This seems to him a reasonable position. He goes to each meeting prepared, with notes, and he says what he thinks when he thinks it needs to be said, and he is quiet when quiet is appropriate. He has been doing this long enough to know the difference most of the time. He is thinking about Ginevra as he finishes with the counter. She will be an excellent apothecary. He has known this since approximately the 2nd month of her apprenticeship, when she corrected his verbal description of a preparation while writing it down, not to show off, but because she had noticed a discrepancy and her instinct was toward accuracy rather than deference. He had rewarded this, not punished it. She is now, at 17, capable of handling most of the standard preparations on her own. He reviews her work and it is consistently good. Her questions are the right questions, specific, practical, genuinely curious. The question she asked tonight about the bark. How will you know for certain? That is the question a good mind asks. Not is this the right thing? Which is the question of someone who wants certainty. But how will you know? Which is the question of someone who understands that knowledge is a process. He is proud of her in the way he imagines a father is proud of a child, not for what she does for him, but for what she is becoming. In 3 years she will be ready to establish her own practice. He is already thinking about how to help her do it. He goes through the curtain to the back room. This is where the real work happens. The front of the shop is the commercial space, the shelves, the counter, the display of who Luca is to the customers. The back room is the workshop. No pretension here. The equipment is arranged for function. The mortar and pestle, now clean, sits in its place on the central bench. 2 sets of scales, a large set for the heavier weighing, a small one with fine plates for the minute quantities that certain preparations require. He checks the scales. The balance of the small ones is critical. If they are even slightly off, the preparations will be off. He checks them by placing identical weights on each side. They balance perfectly. He adjusts nothing. They are correct. He keeps a log of when he last had them calibrated, every 3 months, by the scalemaker on the Via dei Calzaioli. Last calibration was 6 weeks ago. He has 4 more weeks before the next. He writes the date in the small notebook kept specifically for equipment records. Tools are only as reliable as the attention paid to them. In the far corner of the back room, there is a large stone jar. It is sealed with a heavy lid and a cloth wrapped around the rim. Inside is a preparation he has been making for 6 weeks, a slow preparation, one that requires time and cannot be hurried. He lifts the lid and looks inside. A dark liquid. Almost black. He lowers his nose near the rim and breathes in. The smell has changed slightly from last week. Deeper. More settled. Good. He replaces the lid carefully. Adjusts the cloth around the rim. This preparation is for a patient with a chronic condition, a merchant who has been coming to Luca for 3 years with a persistent problem. Luca has been trying different approaches and is not yet satisfied with the results. This preparation is his current best thinking. He will not know if it works until the merchant has been using it for a month. That is the nature of things. He cannot speed the process of finding out. He replaces the lid, adjusts the cloth, and goes back to the front room. He goes to the first window. The shutters are wooden, hinged on the exterior. He reaches out and draws them closed. The iron latch secures them from the inside. He does the same at the second window. The room is now lit only by the lamp. The character of the room changes. The street disappears. The sounds from outside become slightly more muffled. The lamplight, which had been competing with the last grayness from the windows, now has the room to itself. The shop draws inward. This is a transition Luca marks every evening. The closing of the shutters is the shop's becoming private. During the day it faces outward, door open, windows admitting light and sound, the public threshold visible. Now it turns in. The substances on the shelves, which during the day are merchandise, become simply things he is responsible for. His charges. He is the last one in the room with them. He walks the length of the shop one more time. A habit he cannot quite explain, this final walk. He does not look at anything with the detailed attention of the earlier checks. He has already done that work. What this is something different. He moves slowly from the end of the room near the door to the far wall. Looking at the shape of the shelves, the arrangement of the vessels. The overall impression. Everything where it should be. He is aware that he looks for this in the same way as I, long trained, looks for the discordant element in a complex situation. The thing that doesn't match the pattern. There is no such thing tonight. He reaches the far wall and turns. He thinks about the preparation left until morning. About the merchant's commission. About the bark and what it might be. He thinks about Ginevra asking the right question. He thinks about his father and the ledgers. He turns back toward the door. The shop is ready. Before he goes upstairs, he washes his hands. This is not a brief or casual washing. He keeps a basin on the shelf near the back room doorway, clean water every morning, replenished at midday when Ginevra comes. The water is changed again now if necessary. Tonight it is still clean. He plunges his hands in. Then takes the cake of hard soap, made with ash lye and olive oil, which he sourced himself from a soap maker he trusts, and works it between his fingers. He washes carefully. Between each finger. The backs of the hands. The wrists. The rinse water turns faintly gray. He dries on the hanging cloth. He is aware that not everyone in his profession washes with this attention. It is not required by the guild. Some of his colleagues think it excessive. He thinks it is rational. He has spent the day handling substances. Some of those substances, in quantity or in the wrong circumstances, he would not want to carry to the supper table. So he washes. He does not always know why things work. But he observes what happens when he does them and when he doesn't. The empirical habit is, in the end, the same whether you are making preparations or making decisions. He stands at the front door of the shop. It is a solid door, wooden, with an iron lock that required more money than he was comfortable spending when he installed it. He has never regretted the expense. The lock takes a large iron key. He withdraws it from a different cord at his belt. The shop key is separate from the cabinet key. This is deliberate. He sets the lock, tests it, then checks the back room's exterior door. It opens onto a small yard shared with the building behind. He goes back and tries it. Locked, as it was when he locked it this morning. He comes back to the front. One more look at the room. This is the last moment before he is no longer present. Before the shop is on its own for the night. He holds the lamp. Everything is in order. He goes to the stair. The stair is narrow and turns once. At the top, the smell is different. Food. A fire in the hearth, olive oil in a lamp, the particular smell of a family at close quarters. Margarita looks up from the kitchen. She has the direct gaze of a woman who has been watching someone she knows well for a long time. She does not need to ask how his day was. She can see how it was. Sit, she says. 5 minutes. He sits at the table. Katerina comes from her corner. She is indeed carrying something important, a piece of work she has been doing, embroidery on a small frame. She shows it to him. He examines it with genuine attention. Here, he says, pointing to a section where the stitching is slightly uneven. I know, Katerina says, completely unbothered. I'm going to fix it. She goes back to her corner. Margarita sets a cup of watered wine in front of him. He holds it without drinking. Looking at the room. His family in it. He is here. The meal is simple. A soup of white beans with rosemary, made from what was available and from what Margarita judges to be needed. A good bread, she buys from the baker who has been on this street since before Luca moved here. Some hard cheese at the end. A little more of the wine. The conversation at the table has its own rhythm. His mother-in-law, Donna Fiora, speaks at length about a dispute between two families on the street behind them. She has this from the woman she talks with at the water fountain, whose information is reliable. Luca listens with attention that is partly genuine and partly performed, though the performed part has become so habitual it is nearly indistinguishable from the real. Katerina talks about her lesson today. She studies with a woman nearby who teaches reading and some reckoning to the daughters of tradespeople. Katerina learned something today that she thought was wrong but which turned out to be right when she reconsidered it. Luca finds this interesting. He asks what it was. She tells him. It is about fractions. He understands the point of confusion and explains the concept a different way, and watches her face as the understanding arrives. There is nothing quite like that moment. When someone understands something they didn't understand before. After supper, his mother-in-law sits by the fire and grows quiet. She is not unhappy, exactly. She is in a particular state that Luca has come to recognize, the grief that is not acute but is always present, like a low sound under the other sounds. Her husband of 40 years died 2 winters ago. She came to live with them the following spring. She has been good company. Genuinely good. She is practical and unsentimental in ways that Luca appreciates, and she is devoted to Caterina in a way that benefits everyone. But at this hour, sometimes, she is somewhere else. With her husband. In their life before it changed. Luca does not try to pull her out of it. He has learned that some places a person goes in their mind are theirs to go to, and the best thing you can do is not intrude. He sits near her, at a companionable distance. She says, "Your father had an expression for a day that ended well." He waits. He used to say, "The scales balance." Luca thinks about this. He didn't know this about his father-in-law. Did they? He asks. Today? She considers. More or less, she says. He thinks that is probably the most honest answer most days produce. Margherita takes Caterina to prepare for sleep. Donna Fiora nods in her chair. Not asleep but close to it, or in that space between. Luca takes his book. He is reading, he is always reading something. Currently it is a Latin translation of a text by an Arab physician, on the properties of medicinal plants of the Eastern Territories. The Latin is careful but occasionally strained, and he suspects the translator did not fully understand some of the technical terms and made educated guesses. He reads slowly, making small marks in the margin with a thin stick of graphite, not ink, because he might want to revise the mark later. This text has relevance to the bark question. He has been reading it for 2 weeks, but tonight with the bark on his mind, certain passages land differently. He reads. The lamp on the table burns steadily. The fire settles in the grate. Donna Fiora's breathing deepens. She has drifted fully into sleep. He reads for perhaps 20 minutes, until his eyes begin to make the small errors that signal real tiredness, a word misread, a line traced twice. He closes the book on his graphite stick. He takes the lamp. Goes back downstairs to the shop. He has done this every night for 23 years. He has never found anything wrong when he came back. He comes back anyway. He goes to the locked cabinet first. Locked. He checks the wax seal on the valerian jar, still good, the fresh wax fully set. He walks to the door. Tries the lock. Secured. He looks at the room. The lamp makes long shadows from the rows of vessels. The shop at night, lit only by a single flame, has a character that is different from its daytime self. He thinks about all the preparations on those shelves and what they represent. Hundreds of decisions. Hundreds of small accumulations of care, herbs gathered at the right season, preparations made at the right time, stored in the right conditions. A life's work, literally. The physical embodiment of 20+ years of attention. He is not sentimental about this. It is what he does. But he is aware of it. He turns. Goes back upstairs. Caterina is asleep. Donna Fiora has been helped to her room, still half asleep, by Margherita. Now Margherita and Luca sit together for a little while. This is their time. the hour between when the household quiets and when they sleep. They have been taking this hour for 20 years. Tonight she tells him something she has been thinking about. The thicker of the two candle suppliers has been delivering shorter candles than he charges for. She has been measuring them. Luca raises his eyebrows. "How long has this been happening?" he asks. "For months, I think. Maybe more." "You've been keeping track." "Since I first suspected it." He looks at her with the particular kind of appreciation he has for thoroughness when he encounters it. "What do you want to do?" he says. "I want to go to a different supplier. There is a woman on the Via Ghibellina who makes good candles and deals fairly. I've asked around." "Then do that." "I'll tell him why," Margarita says. "Not a question." "Yes," Luca says. She nods, satisfied. They sit for a moment in the comfortable quiet of people who have said what needed saying and have reached a conclusion together. Through the wall, faintly, the sounds of Florence at night. A cart, laid on the stones, probably the night soil collectors beginning their rounds. A dog somewhere in the distance. A bell from one of the churches, though he can't be certain which one at this hour. Florence does not sleep entirely. It is too large, too active, too much in motion. There are always people up. The night watchmen on their rounds. The bakers, starting their fires before dawn. The physicians called to emergencies. The men of business who write letters by lamplight. The city breathes. He has always felt this, the sense that a large city is a kind of living thing. Not metaphorically. Practically. It breathes. It circulates. It has its periods of high activity and its periods of rest, its sick seasons and its healthy ones. He is one cell in that body. One apothecary, in one shop, on one street. It is a small part. But the body cannot do without its cells. He thinks of Ginevra, now at home with her family somewhere in the neighborhood, probably also thinking about the bark. He thinks of the patients who came today. The woman with the cough. The traveler with the stomach trouble. The merchant's household, receiving its tonic tonight. He hopes they are well. All of them. Margarita moves with the particular economy of someone who has done the same thing so many times that the sequence is entirely automatic. She does not think about putting the candles out. She just does it, in the right order, leaving one for the bedroom. She does not think about checking the fire. She checks it, adjusts the grate, judges that it will hold safely through the night. She moves through the room making it ready for darkness. Luca watches her. After 20 years, he still finds something worth watching. She glances at him. "Are you going to sit there?" "For a moment." She goes to the bedroom. He sits for that moment. He is thinking, as he often does in this last quiet space of the evening, about what the day was in aggregate. Not itemizing it. Just holding it as a whole. A good day. A productive day. The merchant's commission completed. The bark arrived. Ginevra asked the right question. The valerian jar resealed. The scales balance, more or less. He rises. The bedroom is small and simply furnished. A bed wide enough for two, with a good wool mattress and a heavy coverlet. A chest at the foot. A small table with the candle, a pottery cup of water. A crucifix above the door, dark wood, simple. On his side of the bed, the book he was reading earlier, he's brought it up from below. Sometimes he reads another page or two. Sometimes he falls asleep before he opens it. Tonight, he thinks, he will not open it. He is tired in the particular way of a day that required sustained attention. Not physical exhaustion, he spent more of the day standing and thinking than lifting and carrying. But the attention itself has a weight. The quality of care required in his work does not allow for lapses. By evening, that sustained care has accumulated its own kind of tiredness. He prepares for bed. Margarita is already there, reading her own small book by the candlelight. She reads in the evenings. Tonight she looks absorbed. He doesn't disturb her. He lies down. He closes his eyes. The first thing he notices, when he stops moving, is the tiredness in his feet. He has been on them since before dawn. The mattress receives him. This, too, is a preparation, the body's preparation for sleep. He feels the tiredness settle from his feet upward. The slight ache in his lower back from hours at the bench. The dryness behind his eyes from a day of reading fine labels. He does not fight any of this. He lets it be present. He has read, not in any formal text, but in conversation with physicians he respects, that sleep is not the mere absence of waking but its own active state. That the body does its repairing in the sleeping hours. He believes this. He has observed it in his patients and in himself. A body that does not sleep well does not heal well. So he treats sleep the way he treats a preparation, with care and intention. He lets the tiredness be present. He breathes. He is still thinking about the bark. Not anxiously. Just with the low attention of a mind unwinding from a problem it has held all day. He thinks about what the physician Tornabuoni had said, last month, about new substances from the Western territories. He had been dismissive, not cruelly, but firmly. Too much of what claimed to be knowledge from those parts turned out to be merchant's tale, he said. Exaggeration in service of commerce. Luca had agreed, in the moment. Tornabuoni is not wrong about this. A great deal does exaggerate. But not all of it. The work of the apothecary, at its edge, the edge where new substances meet established practice, requires a particular kind of attention. Not the credulous attention that believes everything. Not the dismissive attention that believes nothing new. But a careful, patient, empirical attention. He will be patient with the bark. He will observe what he can observe. He will write it down. Whatever it turns out to be, it will teach him something. His mind releases the thought. The bark can wait until morning. Puts out the candle. She turns a page. Then another. Then she closes the book with a soft sound and sets it on the table beside her. She lies back. He feels the mattress shift. The candle, she says, but she is already reaching for it. The flame goes out. Dark. The fire downstairs has been banked. The shop below is locked, secured, orderly. The preparations on the shelves are in their places, sealed correctly. The locked cabinet holds what it holds. The ledger records the day. The city outside is the city at its quietest hour, not silent, but lower, the rhythm slowed. Margarita's breathing beside him. Already slower. He can see the faint shape of the window, no shutters in this room, just a curtain that lets in the ambient light of the city at night. The familiar shape of the ceiling above him. He breathes. In. Out. The day moves through him in a way. Not all at once, gradually. The images of the day, unforced. The first customer, the boy with the toothache, his face expectant in the early morning dimness of the shop. The herb gatherer's delivery, the bundles of rosemary still carrying the faint memory of hillside air. Ginevra's question. The saffron jar, held toward the fading light. The bark wrapped in paper, its reddish-brown, its bitter smell. The ledger. The balance of the scales. The wax settling over the crack. Margarita at supper, watching. Caterina explaining the fraction she misunderstood. Donna Fiora by the fire, the scales balance. More or less. He breathes. The day is assembled. It is what it was. It is not more and not less. He releases it. Margarita is asleep. Her breathing has the quality of genuine sleep, slower, deeper, with the slight irregularity of a person whose body is doing its work. He listens to it for a moment. Below, the shop is quiet. The vessels in their places. The locked cabinet locked. The bark on the workbench, under its paper wrapping, waiting patiently. The fire in the grate downstairs, banked, holding warmth in the ash the way he left it. The city outside, breathing its slow night breath. The watchman on his round. The stars above the roofline, visible through the gap in the curtain where the cloth doesn't quite meet. He is one apothecary, in one building, on one street, in one city, at the end of one ordinary day. The preparations will be needed again in the morning. Someone will come with a question. He will try to answer it well. But that is morning. This is now. Breathe in. Breathe out. The work is complete. The bottles are secured. The night is gentle. And all is well.